She was the fastest mortal alive, raised by bears, trained by a goddess, and determined never to be caught by any man. But 3 golden apples would change everything. This is the story of Atalanta, the huntress whose legendary speed could outrun destiny itself, until divine cunning found the one thing that could make her stumble. In the wild mountains of ancient Greece, where eagles soared above pine-covered peaks and streams ran cold from sacred springs, there lived a maiden whose story would challenge every assumption about women, marriage, and fate itself. Her tale began not with privilege, but with rejection and near death in the wilderness, when King Iasus of Arcadia gazed upon his newborn daughter and felt only bitter disappointment. The king had desperately desired a male heir to secure his dynasty. When the child emerged bearing the form of a daughter rather than a son, his disappointment transformed into cold rejection. Unable to bear the sight of what he considered his dynastic failure, Iasus commanded that the infant be taken to the slopes of Mount Parthenion and left to die of exposure, abandoned on the mountainside with no protection save thin cloth wrapped around her tiny form. But the gods had other plans for this discarded princess. As Atalanta lay crying in the wilderness, her infant wails reached the ears of a she-bear whose own cub had recently died. Guided by divine providence and maternal instincts, the bear took the human child as her own, providing the nurturing and protection that her royal father had denied. Under the bear's care, Atalanta grew into something unprecedented in Greek society, a woman who needed no man's protection. She learned to run with the swift grace of deer, to climb with the sure footing of mountain goats, and to move through forests with such silence that she could approach any creature undetected. Her strength grew until she could wrestle bears, her endurance until she could run all day without tiring. When hunters eventually discovered her living wild in the mountains, they found not a helpless, abandoned child, but a fierce young woman who had become one with the wilderness itself. Her body was lean and powerful, her reflexes quicker than lightning, her knowledge of the forest more complete than men who had hunted there for decades. The goddess Artemis, divine huntress and protector of wild creatures, looked upon Atalanta with approval and claimed her as a favored devotee. Under Artemis's patronage, Atalanta's already formidable hunting skills became supernatural in their precision. Her arrows never missed their target, her spear never failed to find its mark, and her ability to track game through the most challenging terrain became legendary throughout Greece. Atalanta dedicated herself to Artemis with the fervor of one who had found both divine patron and kindred spirit. Like the goddess she served, Atalanta chose to remain a virgin, viewing marriage not as destiny, but as a trap that would rob her of the freedom and power she had fought to achieve. She had witnessed what marriage meant for women: submission to male authority and confinement to domestic roles that would extinguish everything that made her unique. Her reputation as a huntress soon attracted the attention of heroes throughout Greece. When Jason assembled the Argonauts for their quest to retrieve the Golden Fleece, Atalanta was among those invited to join the expedition. Some heroes objected to including a woman, but her skills were too valuable to ignore, and she proved herself again and again as an equal among the greatest adventurers of her generation. But it was her role in the Caledonian boar hunt that truly cemented Atalanta's legendary status. When a monstrous boar sent by Artemis began ravaging the countryside around Caledon, heroes from across Greece answered the call to hunt the supernatural creature. The beast was enormous and ferocious, with tusks like ivory spears and hide so thick that normal weapons barely penetrated it. In the crucial moment of the hunt, when the boar seemed likely to escape or kill more heroes, it was Atalanta who struck the decisive blow. Her arrow, guided by Artemis's divine favor, found the one vulnerable spot in the monster's hide, wounding it severely enough for Prince Meleager to deliver the killing thrust. By hunting customs, she deserved the boar's hide as trophy for drawing first blood. Meleager, who had fallen in love with Atalanta during the hunt, insisted she receive the honor due to her skill and courage. This decision enraged his uncles, who felt a woman should not receive such honor. When they attempted to take the trophy by force, Meleager killed both men to defend Atalanta's rightful claim. His mother Althea, learning that her son had killed her brothers, threw the magical log controlling his lifespan into fire, causing Meleager to die in agony. The tragedy reinforced Atalanta's conviction that involvement with men led inevitably to sorrow and destruction. She resolved more firmly than ever to maintain her independence and virginity, but fate had other plans. Her fame from the boar hunt had spread throughout Greece, and with it came knowledge of her royal birth. King Iasus, learning that the daughter he had abandoned had become one of the most celebrated heroes of the age, suddenly decided to reclaim her as his heir. His change of heart was motivated not by paternal love, but by political calculation. When he approached Atalanta with offers of restoration to royal status, she accepted not out of forgiveness but as a platform to continue living life on her own terms. However, her new status as princess came with one significant complication: her father's insistence that she marry to provide an heir. The demand represented everything Atalanta had spent her life avoiding. Marriage would transform her from an independent being into a servant of male ambition, reducing her extraordinary achievements to footnotes in someone else's story. Unable to simply refuse without facing the full weight of royal authority, Atalanta devised a characteristically bold solution. She announced that she would marry, but only to a man who could defeat her in a foot race. Any suitor who lost would forfeit his life, ensuring that only the most confident would dare challenge her. This condition seemed to offer a way to satisfy social expectations while making marriage practically impossible. Her reputation for speed was legendary throughout Greece. She had outrun deer through mountain forests, kept pace with the swiftest horses across open plains, and covered distances that would exhaust ordinary mortals without showing signs of fatigue. No mortal man had ever matched her speed, and the death penalty for losing ensured that only the most desperate would attempt the challenge. Word of Atalanta's marriage condition attracted suitors from every corner of the known world. Princes and heroes, adventurers and athletes all came to test themselves against the famous Huntress. The races that followed became a grim spectacle as one after another hopeful suitors discovered that Atalanta's reputation was, if anything, understated. She would give each challenger a head start, then effortlessly overtake him before the finish line, her graceful stride making their desperate efforts appear clumsy and inadequate. The penalty for failure was swiftly applied, creating a growing collection of graves that served as warnings to future challengers. With each victory, Atalanta's confidence grew that she had found the perfect solution to remain forever unmarried and free. But among the many suitors observing these deadly races was a young man named Hippomenes, whose approach would prove far more subtle than the brute force strategies of his predecessors. Rather than relying solely on his own speed, which he realistically assessed as insufficient, Hippomenes sought divine assistance from the goddess who governed the very force that might overcome Atalanta's determination to remain free. Hippomenes prayed to Aphrodite, goddess of love and desire, explaining his desperate attraction to Atalanta and his conviction that only divine intervention could help him succeed. Aphrodite, long irritated by Atalanta's rejection of love and dedication to Virgin Artemis, saw an opportunity to demonstrate the ultimate power of desire over even the most determined resistance. The goddess provided Hippomenes with 3 golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides, fruits of such supernatural beauty that no mortal could resist their allure. These were not ordinary apples, but divine creations that embodied the very essence of temptation, each more beautiful and desirable than any treasure mortals had ever seen. Aphrodite instructed him in their use, explaining how the apples might serve as both distraction and symbol. When Hippomenes approached King Iasus requesting the right to race against Atalanta, he appeared to be just another overconfident suitor, doomed to join the growing collection of graves. His athletic build was impressive, but not extraordinary, his speed adequate, but nothing suggesting he could match the legendary swiftness of the princess. The race began with Atalanta giving Hippomenes the customary head start, her confidence absolute and manner almost bored. She had run this same race so many times that it had become routine, a formality endured, before returning to the wild mountains, where she truly belonged. The young man's determined expression seemed no different from the many suitors now buried outside the city. But as Atalanta began her inevitable surge toward victory, Hippomenes revealed his divine strategy. At the moment when she would normally overtake him, he threw the first golden apple off the course, its supernatural beauty immediately catching her attention. The fruit seemed to glow within a light, its perfect form creating an irresistible attraction that compelled her to deviate from her path. Atalanta found herself running toward the apple despite her conscious intention to ignore it. The divine allure was too powerful to resist, representing not just physical beauty, but all the desires and longings she had suppressed in her dedication to independence. By the time she retrieved the golden fruit and returned to the racecourse, Hippomenes had gained a significant lead. The Huntress's competitive spirit flared as she realized she had been tricked, and she poured all her supernatural speed into closing the gap. Her feet seemed barely to touch the ground as she flew across the terrain, her body becoming almost a blur of motion as she called upon every reserve of strength that Artemis had granted her. The crowd gasped as she rapidly gained on Hippomenes. Just as Atalanta was about to overtake him again, Hippomenes threw the second golden apple, even more beautiful and alluring than the first. Once again, the Huntress found herself unable to resist its divine attraction, deviating from her course to claim this second prize. The pattern repeated, retrieval, return, and furious pursuit as she attempted to make up the lost ground. By the time the third and final apple was thrown, the finish line was in sight, and the outcome hung in the balance. This last fruit was the most beautiful of all, seeming to concentrate within itself all the beauty and desire that existed in the world. Atalanta's pursuit of it cost her precious seconds that proved decisive, and when she finally returned to the racecourse with the third apple in her hands, Hippomenes was crossing the finish line as victor. The crowd erupted in amazement, witnessing what had seemed impossible, the defeat of the uncatchable Huntress. But Atalanta stood frozen in realization of what had occurred. She had lost not through inferior speed, but through the power of desire itself, the very force she had spent her life attempting to avoid. The golden apples in her hands seemed to mock her dedication to independence and self-control. Hippomenes approached his defeated bride-to-be with a mixture of triumph and trepidation, uncertain how the fierce Huntress would react to her first defeat. But Atalanta, recognizing the cleverness of his strategy and perhaps feeling the first stirrings of attraction to a man who had proven himself worthy through wit rather than brute force, accepted the outcome with the grace of a true competitor. The marriage that followed was celebrated throughout Greece as the union of two extraordinary individuals, the clever hero who had accomplished the impossible and the Huntress whose independence had finally been overcome by love. But Aphrodite's intervention came with hidden costs that would soon become apparent, for the goddess expected proper gratitude and would not tolerate being forgotten. In their happiness and excitement, both Hippomenes and Atalanta forgot to offer proper thanks to Aphrodite for her crucial role in their union. This oversight proved to be a fatal mistake. The goddess of love, whose pride was as great as her power, decided the couple needed a harsh reminder of their debt to her. Aphrodite's revenge took the form of overwhelming passion at an inappropriate time and place. When the newlyweds were traveling and took shelter in a temple sacred to Cybele, the great mother goddess, Aphrodite filled them with such irresistible desire that they forgot where they were and consummated their passion on sacred ground. This act of sacrilege violated every principle of religious propriety. Cybele's fury at this desecration was immediate and terrible. As punishment for their sacrilege, she transformed both Hippomenes and Atalanta into lions, condemning them to spend the rest of their existence in animal form. According to ancient belief, lions could not mate with each other but only with leopards, ensuring that the transformed couple would remain forever together, but forever unable to express their love physically. The tragedy of their transformation served as both punishment and symbol, representing how the very passion that had brought them together ultimately led to their downfall. Yet their transformation was not purely punitive, but also protective, allowing them to remain together in a form that reflected their wild nature and freed them from the constraints of civilized society. The story of Atalanta and the golden apples became one of Greek mythology's most complex explorations of the tension between independence and love, between personal desire and social expectation. Atalanta represented the possibility of female autonomy and achievement, while her eventual defeat suggested the ultimate power of love and desire over even the most determined resistance. The myth asked profound questions about the nature of freedom and choice, particularly for women in ancient society. Was Atalanta's defeat a tragedy, representing the loss of female independence to male cunning? Or was it a necessary completion, showing how even the most self-sufficient individual needed love and companionship to be truly fulfilled? The golden apples themselves became powerful symbols of temptation and desire, representing all the beautiful things that could lead individuals away from their chosen paths. They embodied the seductive power of immediate gratification over long-term goals, the way that even the most disciplined person could be swayed by the right temptation at the right moment. Modern interpretations often focus on Atalanta as a proto-feminist figure, a woman who challenged traditional gender roles and achieved greatness on her own terms. Her story resonates with contemporary discussions about women's independence, the pressure to conform to social expectations, and the complex relationship between love and autonomy. The racing contest has been seen as a metaphor for the many ways women must prove themselves in male-dominated societies, forced to be twice as good as men to achieve half the recognition. Atalanta's victories against her suitors represented female competence and strength, while her ultimate defeat suggested the persistent power of societal expectations to limit even the most exceptional women. Yet the myth also celebrated love as a transformative force, capable of changing even the most resistant hearts. Hippomenes' victory came not through superior strength or speed, but through understanding what truly motivated his beloved, suggesting that the best relationships are based on genuine comprehension rather than domination. The story endures because it captures eternal truths about human nature, desire, and the complex dance between independence and connection. It reminds us that even the most self-sufficient individuals may find themselves changed by love, and that the paths we choose to avoid may sometimes find their way to us regardless of our determination to resist them. In the end, Atalanta's legacy extends far beyond her fate in the myth. She remains a symbol of female strength and independence, a reminder that women are capable of extraordinary achievement when freed from limiting expectations. Her story continues to inspire those who seek to balance personal autonomy with meaningful connection, showing that it is possible to be both strong and loving, independent and committed, wild and civilized,